Hello, it's Bud. This lesson title is Rotary Jig Application Part 2, and it will touch on something in each of the two new programs, 2D and 3D software. It may touch on more than that, but I'm going to concentrate on two particular things. The target of this lesson is for the people that have Ed Baker's rotary jig or have made a rotary jig of their own. And the purpose of the rotary jig is to be able to carve dowel rod rather than flat stock. Ed's jig is laid out to accept a standard 2-inch dowel. I've modified my applications to be able to do anything larger than 2 inches up to about 4 inches without having any problem. But for this we're going to use a 2-inch piece of stock. For those of you that have never seen the jig or seen how it worked, I have made some patterns for the rotary jig where I have gotten models similar to this piece of ceramic you see here of the white knight's head. I glued it to a piece of 2-inch dowel and extended another piece on the top so that I had the length of 14 inches, which Ed Baker's jig is designed to use. You can see here that the truck is going to run across this piece of wood from left to right. Technically, the yellow particle board underneath is moving, and the CarveWright thinks that's what it's carving. But in reality, the orange sandpaper on this piece of particle board is actually turning this piece of dowel in a clockwise direction, so it is actually cutting in the reverse side of the wood, but the cutter doesn't know any difference because it's going back and forth doing those cuts. That's just a little bit of information there. So let's look at our design board. Ed Baker's recommendation is that we set the length on a 2-inch dowel at 6.727, which is not the mathematical thing that you would think about. 2-inch diameter, pi d is the circumference, so it would be 2 inches times 3.1416. It's a little larger than that. My particle board doesn't always measure at 14 inches, it measures a little bit shy, so I've set my designer a little bit shy of 14 as well, knowing that if the unit measures more than my 13.922, it will ask if I want to size the board, and I don't mind if it goes up a little bit. I don't want to have to redo my design. That's the reason I did that. And I set my thickness at 1 inch because my rotary dowel is actually 2 inches in this case. That's just a little background in that respect. First thing we do is we lay out a field that we're going to deal with. The dotted lines at the top and the bottom are target lines that should have no carving in them. I'm going to change the width on this just a little bit bigger than 6.727. And I'm going to center it. Come on. Horizontally. So now I'm ready to go to the 3D function of extrude. And right now, the red line on the extrude portion is on the left-hand side, and it's on the left-hand side of the board. I actually want my pattern to go the opposite direction, up and down, so I'm going to change this to horizontal. Now the red line's at the top of the board, and the green line's at the bottom. Yellow's in the middle. So we just have that understanding of what we're doing here. So now I'm going to use connected line tool. I could use a spline. It depends on what I'm drawing and how I want to do it. But I'm just going to come up here. These grid lines are 1/2 inch. And I'm using some thinking as how I designed this thing so that the tool will do its job. Okay, I've got this on a slope. Picture this being up and down. A person could not climb up that slope because his legs would fall out from underneath him. I'm going to change this portion of the line down here at the bottom to an arc form, and I'm going to do it this way, and that doesn't look bad. Okay, so I'm going to accept it, and it's applied. So let's see what it looks like here. Come on. There. Square it up. So that's what it looks like. Okay. So I'm going to highlight that, and my total depth on this wall is a 773, which is fine. It's about what I want. So I've highlighted that rectangle with that extruded slope on it the way I want it. Click on group, and I'm going to highlight both the group and the pattern that I'm going to make, and I'm going to make pattern, and I'm going to call this thing a rook, because we're making a castle or a rook. And I'm going to save it. So now I can throw that away, and I'm going to pattern library. I'm going to get that a rook and bring it in here, set it on here again. There's probably other ways I can do this, but this is just to keep my sanity as I go along. Again, I've got that line that I'm bringing to the bottom, and I'm going to lay it out centered again, horizontal. And now what I want to do is I want to put some slots for the archer in this top portion. So this is what I'm going to deal with. I'm going to turn on my grid so we can see what we got. Okay, so I want a rectangle, and I'm going to start it above this piece and bring it down. Okay, I'm going to make it like a 3/10 of an inch, and I'll make it 1 1/4 inches long. Oop. Position it again. So I want it to be up so the hole's at the top all the way, but it doesn't make a hole in the bottom. And we're going to apply carve region of 250. So I put a size of a 0.3 and it took me down to a 297. That's okay. Okay. So now what I need to do is we're going to use the 2D application of copy offset, and I'm going to use copy horizontal, and I want 3 more slots, so I've got a total of 4, and I want them evenly spaced across the board. So if I did my math, I could figure out how I want to do it, but I played with it a couple times and I'm close to what I want, so we'll see how it ends up. I'm going to change the spacing to a 1.65. And why did it not? Okay. I had this before. I'm going to have to pause, I'm not sure. Okay, figured that out. The rook pattern I made subtractive, and that allows the carve areas that I did, because I've got, this is a 0 carve up here technically, so I need to change something in order for it to happen. And if I highlight any one of these, I can move this thing over here, and they all move together, so I can count in between. I've got half inch, and almost 3/4 inch, 1.6 I think I used, or 6.5. So they look like they're just about evenly spaced. I won't know until I do an actual carve, but I did use a 1.65, I believe it was. And there we have our castle. I can save this MPC, but I can also highlight these items, make them a group, and make this another pattern. With the slots, and save it. So now if I throw this away and go to patterns, okay, with the slots, bring it in here, and if it works right, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I've got it. And I can also do a mirror, vertical, and I can do 2 of them at one time. It's a little convoluted, but I just wanted to show you what you might be able to do now, making your own chess pieces or salt and pepper shakers or whatever, without scanning something. The other thing we can do, just to be on the fancy side, is if I go to my pattern library and get something like this bulldog, scale it down, lay out, center it there, and also mirror it. So now I have a castle with a bulldog running the bottom wall. Just as one more defense mechanism. I would have to change the depth on the dog, maybe a little bit. Just to keep it from looking too much out of place. But that's what I could end up with. And again, if I like that, I can highlight all this stuff as much as I want. Maybe if I want half of it, I can do half of it. I don't need a square. And I can make that a pattern by grouping. Go to make pattern. AA, rook, dog. Save it. Highlight all this stuff, throw it away. Rook, dog. Center horizontal. Layout. Mirror. And there I've got two rooks. Little roundabout, but that's an application of a 2D and a 3D tool used on a rotary jig application. I hope it helps.